Hey there, want to know how you make awesome compositions? Then this video is exactly for you. Let's check it out. Okay, so in this video we're gonna look at a couple of tools you can use to enhance your compositions while drawing. Now before I want to jump in, I want to just have a closer look at a couple of images that I personally really enjoy to look at. And not because they have awesome colors or awesome content, it's more about the composition aspect of it. So let me show you what I mean with this. So if we look, for example, at the image on the top left one, which is made by Rembrandt, The Night's Watch. It's a bit of a dark image, but if you look at it, there are lines. All these heads are aligned. All that this person is looking that way. Everything in this image is driving us to the middle two figures, and specifically to the left figure. They're actually just arrows pointing us towards the middle. Look over here, something is going on. Now this is also something we see in the image, for example, on the right, made by Loish. Naturally, we are attracted towards looking at a face because that's human, that's something we can relate to. But the other focal point might even be this hand. And we constantly keep switching between these two. So there's a very strong focal point in both of these images where we tend to look towards. And that is deliberate, done by the creator of this image. Now another image, if we look here on the bottom right, we see this image of a girl laying with something of a doll made by Egon Schiele. And what you can see is that there's like a way of going towards this image like this. We go over here, then we see this face, and we follow this arm. We go over here, we see another face, we go over here. And this is exactly what we do when we go over this image. We just go round and round and round and round. And also that is made deliberately by the artist. Now the left bottom one, made by Mondrian. Now Mondrian was a very analytical painter. He started out with drawing trees and stuff, but eventually he saw these branches go in certain ways and thought about a more mathematical approach of drawing these things, and ended up with drawings like this. Although we can't really relate to the things we see in here except for lines and colors, the image is very much balanced, because if we divide the image up into fourths, you can see that the top parts, every part has somewhat of color, somewhat of interest to look at. It doesn't feel like we only tend towards this part, because if we look over here, we also think what's going over here. We go over here and then we go over here. Just having this way of filling an image balanced, so the viewer goes all over the place. That is exactly what composition is about. Now one of the tools you can use to enhance your own compositions is actually these 6 rules within an image. These are all landscaped, but it doesn't really matter if you go for a landscape, which is like this, landscape, or a portrait, which is like this, portrait. These all apply. So this one, for example, in a portrait would mean like this. The focal point is in the middle of the image. If we look at all these images, what you'll see is that they are somewhat, either the focal point is in the middle, or the focal point is a little bit more on the off side of the center. So a little bit more to the right and bottom, or to the left top, or right top, or left bottom. Now these all can be used to arrange your image or design your image and make an appealing composition. Now what I want to stress is that if we look at all these ways of making or design an image, it's very awesome, but in the end making a composition is really the way you feel when you design the elements. So let's have a look at what we can do to design and arrange elements together. So one of the most important things we need to understand when we're drawing an image is the concept of unity with variety. Now what is unity with variety? Unity with variety actually means the difference between creating chaos, which is variety, or creating something very structured and something that the eye can really look at, which is unity. Now, if we look a little bit more closely at what is unity or what is variety, we can see that unity is just a couple of things. It's either grouping, creating a focal area, creating balance, creating rhythm, or creating repetition. In a little bit, we're going to look at an art piece and we're going to check out how the artist is using these kinds of factors to create an appealing image. But to give you a little bit of an understanding, you can either use all of these elements in a certain way in your image. For example, grouping can be done either to create a grouping of values. So for example, the left bottom part or everything around the image is dark, like we've seen in The Night's Watch by Rembrandt, except for the centered character, which is very light. So we have a grouping of lights and darks. But you can also think about grouping elements. So for example, we have houses. All the houses are grouped together and all the people are also grouped together. These are all ways of creating grouping. Now in the vocal area is something we talked about earlier. Balance is something that if we look at an image, we don't want to have all the information over here. If we have all the information over here, then why do we have a right part of the image? You could just cut it off. So we also need some information over here. Now rhythm is more about making the eye go from one side to the other and more like a musical way. And the same is also with repetition. We want to see repeating things, because if we don't see repeating things, then we are thinking like, is this a single thing or is this something that comes back? Repetition is something we can use as well. Now within an image, it's not necessary that we use all of these factors. We can only use one or two, but then we need to balance it out with variety. So what is variety? Variety can be anything. Variety could be the difference between lights and darks. Or variety could be the difference between surreal or real. Here I've created a list, but this is very much dependent on what you put in your image. If your image is about dragons, then it's very nice to have 2 dragons in there, but we need to have something else in there as well to make it variety. We could have those 2 dragons and one is a male and the other one is a female. This already creates variety. It doesn't really matter what you do, but you need to think about the concept of having somewhat of unity in there and somewhat of variety in there. Because if we balance those 2 together and we have unity and variety, then we have an image which is very appealing to look at. Okay, let's have a closer look at an image I personally really enjoy to look at, which is this one by Loish. I really find this image so cool because it's somewhat surreal and real and there's things going on here. It just keeps my eye moving all over the place and I'm really engaged at looking at this image. But why does this happen? Now let's start by looking at unity. Is there grouping in this image? Well, yes, there is grouping in this image. First of all, what I see is that we have a grouping of these flowers on the bottom part. And then we have the grouping of the middle tones and the dark tones and the light tones. So the background is very much grouped as a light tone. It's a very simple shape in the background, which really much clarifies that there is a background. Now the other grouping I see are these strands of hair. They really communicate a very much clear way of the darks. So what we see is this image, and this hand is very simple to see because we have these darks in the background, which could be seen as a shape. So there's grouping. Now another thing I see is a vocal area. First of all, the vocal area, of course, is the head. But another focal area I see is this hand. We keep looking at this hand because it's somewhat surreal. It's so pinkish that it's almost unreal. So we also have a focal area. Now, is there a balance? Yes, there is a balance, because if we would divide this image up into half, then we have a lot of attention here on the top part of the image because we have the face and the hand, but she also added some flowers here on the bottom. Now, why did she add these flowers on the bottom? Because they balance out the image. If we didn't have these flowers on the bottom, this image would be less appealing to look at, because we will be thinking, well, there's so much information on the top. Why is there no information on the bottom? Is there rhythm in the image? Yeah, there's a lot of rhythm in the image, because you can see this hair is all moving in a certain way. It's almost like a dance behind her head. So we have this rhythm of hair going all around. Now, is there repetition? Yeah, there is a lot of repetition, and not so much in what we see as in tangible elements, but more in the colors she's using. Because we have this hand which is pink, but then we see this pink coming back all over the place in the image. Here underneath you can see it, underneath her chin you can see this pink. You can really much see that this pink is a recurring thing in the image. So there's also repetition. If the hand, only the hand would be pink, we would be thinking, no, this doesn't make sense. But if we see this color coming back all over the place in the image, then it makes sense. Alright, so let's look at variety. Is there variety in this image? Well, first of all, a variety I see is the real with the surreal. Now, first of all, we have this real girl, which is, well, we can relate to this girl, but then we have the surreal. She has a bluish skin, which doesn't really make sense, and her hand is a totally different color. So there's somewhat of a surrealism in this image. Now, another thing I see are warm colors and cool colors, which is already something we went across because we see this hand, which is a lot of warm colors, but then the skin overall has more cooler colors, the same with the hair, which is also more cooler colors. Now, another thing I see is the way she rendered the image. The overall skin is very rendered, while the back part of the image is very graphical, same as the hair. It's pretty much graphical, it's not that rendered. So we have rendered and graphic. Now, another variety I see is the human and flowers. So these are overall the skills I see in the image within variety. Now, as you can see, she's both using unity and variety in this image to create an image which is very appealing to look at. Now let's see if we can make an image ourselves with these skills in mind and make a cool composition. Alright, so let's draw a composition. We're not going to make a final image fully rendered, we're just going to draw a couple of thumbnails to create an appealing composition and arrange how we're going to make an image. So I've just written down here a sentence that we can use to create the image. A man in nature. There's so many ways to interpret this, so let's do that as well and interpret it in a lot of ways. Okay, so I've created a couple of thumbnails that are made with thinking in compositional terms. Now let me show you what I mean with thinking in compositional terms. First of all, there's a little bit of darkness in here because we have this graveyard in there. I'm not sure why that happened, but it's in there. Let's see how this compositional thing works. First of all, in this image, we see division of interest. First of all, we have a lot of interest over here, so visually there's something going on over here, but we need to balance the image out, so we also have something here on the right. Now, I didn't want to have only image here on the bottom side of the image, but also on the top side, so I've created a cloud here with a little bit of hatching in a style of Mobius, which I personally really enjoy, to have somewhat of images in here as well. Now, the image over here is, we have this farmer with a gun, and he's looking at this monster which is in the darks. Now, this image, because they are also looking towards each other, is very much all directed between this gaze towards each other. Now, I wanted to have this part also closed, because it's only about these two people staring, or this animal and a farmer staring towards each other and seeing what's going on. So we have this image, this part which is framing it off, and then this hand is also again directing us towards this animal, and this tree is directing us towards this guy. Now this image is also has some composition. Well, first because we have the focal point in the middle, this face, but it's not mid-mid, it's a little bit over here. Now the camera is below, and I wanted to enhance that we are looking at him, because this hand and this arm is all again directed toward here, and here we have this line of the cloud as well. These lines are also directing towards there. This is all towards this focal point, while he is looking out into the future like a real man. Then we have this area of somewhat of a cemetery. Now also again, I've used the perspective as a line to look at this image in the middle. And we could say that there's a little bit of variety in here, because that's the whole thing with cemeteries. Nature is really thriving in there. These are parks full of trees and all stuff, but then dead men are in there, which is a very contrary thing to have in there. So we could say that the unity in this composition is the vocal area, and the variety is death versus living, because we also see this guy living. This already creates a certain storytelling with it. Now another thing in this image is also man and machine. Man versus machine. They seem to be somewhat buddies because they're grouped together, so we have grouping. We have grouping of the image, and on the other hand we have the grouping of the mountains, so they are also grouped. And also in this image I'm using visually an interest over here and visually an interest over there. In this image again, the guy standing with a shovel, and we do not see what he is looking at. So he's looking over here and we do not see what's going on. Now because we have all these images, we can understand that he's digging a grave. But if we only saw these images, we would be thinking, hey, what is he looking at? So this is really somewhat more of a frame we could use in a comic before we go to the payoff, which is the grave. Now in this image again, I've chosen not to put the guy in the center. So if we look at visually, the guy is over here, we have a house over there, and we have him looking towards over here. So we have somewhat of a vocal area here and here, and somewhat that drives us down because the guy is looking down. So as you can see, drawing with composition in mind gives us more the ability to really create a visual story. So I hope this video was interesting for you, and now you're a little bit more aware on how to use composition in your drawings. I wish you all the best of luck with creating nice art. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you want to stay updated into new videos around drawing. And click on the link over here to follow me on Instagram to see what I make. Thanks a lot and have a nice day. Adios.